I'm going to make some Himalayan salt brine, but before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about salt, about why we need it, and about why salt brine is actually a really, really good form of salt to take. Now, really, all of the bad press that's surrounding salt, in the sense that it causes high blood pressure, it causes water retention, and a whole host of other health implications, all of that bad press is actually true, but it's only true because it's based on scientific studies that have been done on highly processed and refined table salt. Now, this kind of salt really, it's been heat treated to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. It's been bleached. It's completely denatured. It's had all of the minerals and electrolytes removed from it. And really, what you're left with after it's been processed is just a complete toxin. It's completely unnatural. The body doesn't recognize it and doesn't know what to do with it, and therefore it causes, never-ending list of all these health implications. And unfortunately, this is the kind of salt that most people are consuming. Either they're adding it to their food, or they're eating a lot of processed foods that are very rich in this kind of denatured processed salt. Now, it's important to understand that that set of data regarding salt does not apply to all salt. And the truth is, we need it. We need salt regularly. There's so many different functions in the body that require salt in order to work properly. Now, really, the two main forms of salt that the body can utilize is going to be either sea salt or certain kinds of rock salt. Now, the reason why these types of salt are so complete is that they have the full spectrum of 84 trace minerals that the body needs, and they're very rich in electrolytes, which the body also needs. Now, sea salt, really, there's a lot of suspicion about the use of sea salt simply because of the level of toxic contamination in the oceans, and it's a very real consideration. I personally don't use sea salt because of that, because everything that comes out of the ocean now is, has a high risk of being contaminated with heavy metals, with radiation, various other things, PCBs. So ideally, I wouldn't really use sea salt based on that. And I'm not saying not to use it necessarily. I think it's probably much better to use than table salt. It depends really where it comes from as well. But generally speaking, I don't use it because I use a form of rock salt called Himalayan salt. Now, Himalayan salt is mined from various locations in the Himalayan mountains, and it's said to be over 250 million years old. So really, it predates the Industrial Revolution by so much that the risk of it being contaminated with a lot of these modern day toxic pollutants that really are rife in our environment, the risk of that is pretty much nil. Like, it's a really pure salt, and again, it's got the whole spectrum of 84 trace minerals and electrolytes, and because it's a crystal, because it comes as in a crystal form, it actually has the ability to store vibrational energy, which is really, really interesting aspect to Himalayan salt. Now, I made a list here covering not all, but just some of the functions in the body that require salt. They need it, and why salt is so essential. It's an essential nutrient, and we must have it. Now, in terms of the electrolytes, they're really going to go a long way towards improving nervous system function, heart function, and also muscle contraction. Also, hormones require the right kind of electrical environment in the body in order to communicate properly. And really, electrolytes will create that electrical environment. Also, the pH is a really, really big one for salt. Now, pH, obviously, at one end you have alkaline, the other end you have acid. Now, in terms of the various different areas of our body that require pH, if we look at the digestive system as an example, in the stomach, it's very, very acidic. We have hydrochloric acid in the stomach to break down nutrients, especially protein. Now, in salt, the main ingredient is sodium chloride, and the stomach acid is hydrochloric acid. So you can see salt actually is a major part of the makeup of our stomach acid. Now, if we just go below the stomach into the small intestine, we can see that the small intestine is actually 1,000,000 times more alkaline than the stomach. Now, in order for food to pass from the stomach into the small intestine without there being any kind of acidic damage, it first has to pass through the duodenum, which is a kind of pH buffer zone where the food that comes from the stomach gets alkalized so it can safely pass into the small intestine. Now, in the duodenum, there is sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate. So you can see there's salt there too. Salt actually creates both the acidic and alkaline pH areas of our body. So really, we need salt for that. We need it. Salt is also responsible for maintaining optimal adrenal function. Now, the adrenals are responsible for releasing over 50 different hormones into our system. So really, we need to maintain adrenal health. Also, the trace minerals in the salt will go a very long way to activating all enzyme function in the body. That can be digestive enzymes and metabolic enzymes. Now, the minerals and trace elements are actually the cofactors which enzymes require in order to do their job properly. Now, they're the kind of fuel almost that the enzymes will utilize to get their physical work done. Now, the metabolism is largely, almost exclusively, the result of the physical work that the enzymes do. And so by providing those enzymes with the alkaline minerals that they need in order to work properly, we're actually upregulating our metabolism, improving metabolic function. And in doing that, we can even go so far as to say that we would enhance sensory perception, because all of these things really rely on the work of enzymes. Now, some, but not all of, but some common problems linked to either a lack of salt or too much of the wrong kind of salt would be osteoporosis, arthritis, gout and water retention, obesity and diabetes, chronic fatigue, lowered immune system function, hormone imbalance, impaired digestion, etc., etc., etc. I mean, the list just goes on. Now, salt really is required for so many crucial functions in the body. We really need it. And Himalayan salt in particular can actually, if consumed in the right amounts and in the right way, can actually contribute, in conjunction with appropriate diet and lifestyle factors, it can contribute towards the healing and reversal of these aforementioned conditions. It's not a cure by any means, but within the right context, it can actually help alleviate these symptoms and heal them. Now, in terms of salt brine, which is what I'm going to make in a minute, what brine actually is it's a salt, liquid salt solution. It's basically salt dissolved in water. It's really quite simple. Now, salt is actually at its most bioavailable form when it's dissolved in water. Making brine is really excellent for making salt as absorbable as possible, and brine has a much higher energetic value than just the salt crystals on their own. It's much more potent than just salt on its own, so you need to use less of it. Now, really, Himalayan salt, if you add it to water, or if you add the brine to water, what it's going to do is lower the tension of the water, and it's actually going to make it more fluid or more liquid-like. And in doing that, it's actually going to make it more absorbable by the body, by the cells of the body. It's really interesting to note that water that doesn't have minerals in it doesn't really have a structure. Now, that kind of water would be distilled water or reverse osmosis water, and a lot of people drink this because it really removes all toxins that may be present, but it actually removes all the good stuff, all the minerals and the electrolytes as well. So really, if you consume water like that, what you're doing is dehydrating the body, because the minerals in water act as a kind of password to get that water into the cells. It's kind of like a magnet that draws the water in. And if the water doesn't have that, then the cells will just remain dehydrated. They can't absorb the water. And this is where a lot of water retention comes from, because people are either consuming dead water, even tap water, would fall into that category, or they're consuming too much of the wrong kinds of salt. So really, if we want to absorb that water into the cells and get rehydrated, it needs to have minerals in it, and those minerals and those trace elements are actually, as we mentioned before, the raw materials that enzymes need in order to function properly. So, really it's important when we consume water that it's structured and it's remineralized. Obviously the best kind of water would be locally harvested spring water. Not everyone has access to that, so if you use purified water like distilled or reverse osmosis, if you add salt or specifically brine to that water and you mix it in properly, you can really restructure that water, give it a good mineral profile, electrolytes, and really improves the quality of the water. Now, this dynamic with the cells can also really improve nutrient absorption into the cells and the removal of metabolic wastes, because the cell will be kind of volumized by the water and mineral content. So really it's just so important. So without getting too much further into all of that, that's a very complex subject that could be talked about for a long time, but really I don't have unlimited time with making a video, so I'll just get on with making the brine. It's really, really easy. Now, it's simply a case of adding in Himalayan salt crystals. Now you need a glass jar for this. You need a glass jar with a glass lid. If it has a kind of plastic rim inside it, that's fine. The plastic's not really going to be in the water anyway, so there won't be any leaching. But you really don't want to do this in a plastic container, and you don't want any metal in the lid or on the jar anywhere, because the salt's going to rust that, and you really, you don't want to be consuming rust. So it has to be glass jar, glass lid, and if it has a plastic rim, it's fine. Now we add a load in. You want to add in a fair amount, simply because when you finished making the brine, it's going to be 26% salt in the water. Now, when that takes about 4 hours for that to happen. Now, once you've waited 4 hours, you know it's ready if there's still some salt crystals left. If there's not, then it means that all of them have dissolved, and you don't know really what percentage the salt solution is. If there's still some left, then it means it's reached 26% and it's stopped dissolving the crystals. So you need, really after 4 hours, to still have some of these salt crystals left in the bottom of the jar. Now I'm going to add some locally harvested spring water that I collected. I mean, you can just add any kind of purified water to this if you want. So yeah, after 4 hours, there should be some salt crystals still sat in the bottom of that. If that's the case, then it's ready. I can use it. Now the best way to use it is with a dropper bottle with a pipette. Now you can add, a couple of drops of this to your glass of water or to any drink that you're having, except don't put it in hot drinks because the heat will denature the salt. So other than that, you can add, say if you have completely purified water, you can add about 10 drops into each litre. Give it a good stir, mix it in, and yeah, all of the health benefits that we previously mentioned, you can really obtain those from consuming brine. Brine is really the most bioavailable, highly energetic form of salt to consume, and I would recommend Himalayan salt as the best form of salt. So yeah, that covers how to make salt brine and why. If you have any questions regarding that, yeah, don't hesitate to contact me. Thanks for watching. Take care.